Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and as always, we have our friend Professor O who is joining us today so that we can talk about a film that neither one of us have seen in quite a while, but it has so many layers to it. I think it deserves an entire discussion to itself, don't you think?
Oh, it does. There's so many layers. Just there's that term somewhere, a magnificent failure, and
Yeah.
this encompasses all of that.
I agree. I think that in some way that this was Disney's first attempt of making a other than G-rated movie. Up to this point, it was That Darn Cat and The Absent-Minded Professor and 10,000 reruns of stuff that were made in the 50s and then theatrically shown in the 60s. And they came with this, and it was something completely different in some ways, but unfortunately, they couldn't get away from some of the tropes that they had set up in a lot of their 60s films, which gave them this goody goody kind of branding. And so
Right,
I
and
have very mixed feelings
Star,
about this.
yeah, right, because and Star Wars comes along, and they're trying to escape it's a kind of a family business, and they're trying to escape. Disney's trying to escape the. I mean, they did well in some respects, but their returns were really starting to decline with like Return to Witch Mountain, the Witch Mountain films, Herbie the Love Bug, some
Yeah.
films that are memorable, but they're so stuck with that branding. And then Star Wars comes along, and it's interesting how this film is so twinned also with Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They come out within
Yes.
2 weeks of each other, and under some of the same constraints. I think this budget was Star Trek: The Motion Picture. They were kind of blamed for some things that were not in their control in the budget, but nonetheless they went over budget significantly. This
Yeah.
film went over budget, and
Yeah. It
this
was
film
budgeted what,
was
20,
also
$28 million, something like that.
exactly. And yeah, for Star Trek it goes to 45. That
Yeah.
and then this film. The other constraint is, I think, just like Star Trek, they promised a date that this film has got to be ready by that date in theaters, no matter what. And it's right. The other thing is, another similarity is, not only did they have a date they were stuck to, they couldn't push that date outward if they fell behind,
Yeah.
and they had trouble with special effects too. But they also were stuck with not having a finished script as they do the movie. They, just like Star Trek, they didn't know how it was going to end, and and just, I mean, it's a twin brother in so many ways.
Well, there's so many movies that have had an ending that they weren't sure what they were going to do with until they were filming, and yeah, Star
Good
Trek was one
point.
of those, and this one was, and Casablanca was one of those. I mean,
Oh
they
yeah,
knew what they had to do, but they weren't quite sure how they would make it believable. We've talked about that, but in this particular one, I think that they had where they had a rush. The only things that I think they missed were taking care of, like the wires that were holding up the robots, or a hand that was holding up by one of its feet underneath. But other than that, I thought that the special effects were just the best part of this film, and the model work and the whole mood, the black hole itself.
oh
They were the first to be able to pan along a blue screen and keep it all lined up properly. And
right.
that was something. I mean, we can all do on our home computers today, but at that time, without the computer assist, you couldn't actually pan on a matte shot.
That's
And
exactly. And apparently, they asked for some help, but maybe from John Dykstra. I'm not sure. I do know there was some asking for help, and I don't know. It could have been the budget, because I think it was like a Disney. I want to say a son-in-law that was running. That was doing a lot of those, the Herbie films and the Witch Mountain
yeah,
films, and very much it did not want to spend much money on anything. And so accordingly, the special effects were done all in house.
Yes.
and
That
you
was
just
probably
got
the
to tip
last
your
film that had special effects all done in house.
yes, and you just got to tip your hat uh, to to the
Yeah.
work that was done in house. I mean, that was basic. They were inventing new things on the spot, including you're exactly right. That computer controlled motion control system to do those amazing shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
keeping that.
that motion control
Yeah,
system was something that was developed for Star Wars, and Disney tried to rent
right.
it from them, and their rent price was too high, and they built their own. It was actually superior to what Lucasfilm was using at the time, but they only used it on the one film.
Oh, that is amazing. Yeah, they
Yeah.
used it on the one film, and it would do things like keep where you could actually for the for the viewer. There was a podcast that was describing this too. Kind of a shot where it's a tracking shot. We move along while they're
Hmm.
having dinner, like the Captain Nemo type dinner that Maximilian
Yeah.
Schell is giving his guests, and so you pan along, but the idea where you can track across the dinner table, but keep the black hole, that incredible black hole in the window,
Yeah.
aligned with that tracking shot. It's just one example of motion control. There's so many
Yeah. Well, the
exterior
whole
ship
bridge.
examples too.
I don't
The
think
simple
that
one.
anything on the bridge
Oh,
was real. It was all I would say CG. It wasn't CG. It was actually painted in, and
painted
it's
in,
amazing.
and maybe traveling mats too, or mat work.
Yeah.
That's especially for and that bridge is simply breathtaking.
Yes.
That's breathtaking to this day. I can't remember. I mean, it's like one source mentioned 2 stories high. Actually, it was the Alan Dean Foster novelization calls it 2 stories
Yeah.
high. It feels like it's 4 stories high, or at least three. I mean, it's
Well,
just
it probably
breathtaking.
is. They just had another, level. They could go up on a mezzanine level over the bridge, but yeah, it was much taller than that.
Yeah, yeah, the wide angle shots of that thing and all the cyborgs, which we discover are
Yeah.
cyborgs, horrifically are cyborg. Man, this film would Star Trek the motion picture was rated G. This was rated PG, and
Yeah.
this ventures into space horror.
It
The
does.
idea of those cyborgs that yeah.
The funny thing about it though is that it didn't get its PG for the gore. It got it
Mm.
for in fact, it had a G the first time they ran it through, and they went and redubbed
Oh,
some curse words in it so they could get a PG. They wanted a PG for this.
right. Wow. Yeah, good research, Professor B. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Of that it
And
was a first run through was a G.
yeah. The well, I mean, these days it would be a PG because the of the violence
Yeah.
and all of that. But at that time, you didn't care about violence; you just didn't want any sex in it or words. But they brought out Peter Ellenshaw out of retirement in order to do a lot of the special effects for this, and I think he had
That's
something to
right.
do with the model building as well. And that is one of the best models I've ever seen.
It yeah, it's just breathtaking. That would be a fun. That would be like you know how you get your AMC model or your I was trying to think there was Revel or
And
Revel, I forget how
Revel and
you
AMT, yeah,
yeah, that would, and I'm trying to remember who might have handled something. And actually, probably, they were actually there was tons of toys that came out with this film
yes,
because they wanted to market it to Star Wars kids.
yeah,
and
they did.
But that model would have been like building a sailing ship model. I love building models, but I never built
Yeah.
sailing ship models because they were just too hard.
I have to
This
think
model,
that part of Space 1999 was took some uh, liberties with the Cygnus design. You remember
that's
their Eagle
fascinating.
transports, things like that, that had that
Right.
pipe work and stuff.
That's right.
So,
That it.
I mean, you can't look at this film and not say that it's a beautiful film. It is
Oh,
absolutely a beautiful film,
taking.
even more so than Star Trek was, the motion picture, because they actually had their effects in better things. But the problem that they had was everything else. the script was a disaster. They had, if I'm thinking if Roddy McDowall had been there himself instead of the robot, he still would have been a pain in the butt running the aphorisms all the way through the film. But
I was trying to come up with an aphorism for that.
yeah, I think the third or fourth time he said something like "still water runs deep," they'd have just taken out their blaster and shot him, and that would have been the end of that for the film.
Yeah, let's probably we can handle the problems first because I still, to me, it is we'll get to the problems first, but where I find it redeemable is it tries to do something big. It actually
Yes.
tries to give you some, and accordingly, there's some really interesting ideas which we can chew on that tie to the ending of the film.
Yes,
But
I want to talk about that.
but the problems first. You might forgive you go, just out of Roddy McDowell. I just love the guy, and he's so much fun. Brings you can kind of forgive some of that. But then there's Slim Pickens, and I love Slim Pickens, but the mix of the two in this film is a mess. It
Yes.
just and
And
yet
they took
you
an
watch.
otherwise very adult film, a very adult
Yes,
film, and they said, "Oh, let's do something for the kiddies." So you have this very serious film that's completely blown out of the water by two cartoon characters, essentially.
yeah,
And I understand originally they wanted to do something different with the eyes. They wanted to have them like screens that would have, different things that could display on them, and they
the
decided it was too
eyes.
expensive. And so
Oh.
they just, took Mickey Mouse's eyes and put them in there, and that was it.
And watching it again, it's funny. For most of the time, you just think they've just painted on even the eyeball itself, even just the blackness of the retina. But in the amazing close-ups of the characters at the end of the film, when they're going through the black hole, you actually can see their little cameras. They actually put little, and
Yeah.
so but that was 2 hours in that you realize, wow, those are little cameras instead of just painted on eyes. Because for most of the film, it just looks like this is the goofiest thing in the world, painted on eyes, and and sunglasses would have helped. Anything to cover those.
Yeah, I was
The
I was ready to space both of those robots before half the film was over.
Oh man, that's the other thing is uh like we were talking about the robots with the eyes and the robots in general. Oh, one thing that reminded me of this kind of mismatch was the mismatch. It reminds me of the prequel film, the third Star Wars prequel film, um, where you got uh, you, you Luke, basically Anakin. You got Anakin as not Luke. You got Anakin as a as a young kid. We see him in the
Mhm.
first, and then he grows up. But there's this innocence of children. But now in the third movie, this character kills all the acolytes in the temple. And that's that kind of a mismatch of, is it a kids movie or is it a dark, horrific adult film that you get in this film? It's that you
Yeah.
get some of those strange mismatches, and it's yeah, it like you were mentioning, it leads to an aura of bizarrity, if that's
I
a
like that
word.
word. I like that word. I think though they were trying to make two different films. They were saying on one side they wanted to make Disney's first real adult film with themes. I would say mature themes. That makes it sound dirty, but it's really mature, existential kinds of issues that it wants to bring up. And then they also wanted to make something for the kids. And frankly, half the movie wasn't suitable for kids, especially at the time. And certainly half the movie wasn't really good to for a serious film because they take you right out of it. It's like they have somebody in a straw hat and a striped coat doing a tap dance across the screen while we're about to die. It just doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense to
and
me.
and the meaning of life and death with as the straw hat. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's yeah, a strange mismatch. Um,
Now, somebody said that this was like they were trying to redo 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I can see some of the similarities there in the designs and the nature of the captain and things like that. And also kind of trying to do 2001, especially near the end, where they have something rather as existential about, I can't say it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Oh
Make
yeah,
it somewhat cerebral.
right.
And I'm not sure. I wish that they would take the best of those ideas and make the film over again. It could be one of the best science fiction films ever.
Right, because it dares to really explore in a serious way. So many films or space operas don't tend to do this. So many films
Yep.
uh, just don't tend to go after that little bit of, what connects us. What are our deepest beliefs? What are our deepest beliefs that we've had for years? Religious beliefs, philosophical beliefs, the meaning of life and death. I
Yeah.
always, I want McCoy on the side for that. Oh, those little things.
No,
But
you wrote an entire paper on this several years ago, and I just read it yesterday, and I'm impressed with that. I'm more impressed with that than I was with film, honestly. But the idea of searching for meaning and a black hole as being kind of a device in which, since we don't know anything about it, we paste into it hopes and dreams.
Oh, that's well put. And the idea that yeah, and gotta tip our hat too to our colleague Dr. Roth, who passed away
Yep,
recently. But
wonderful fellow.
he had written a paper on this film in 19. I mean, I want to say 1980. Just as soon as it came out, he told me that he would go and watch the film over and over. And one of his sources was a religious scholar named Iliad, and Iliad writes about the two things. For one thing, the nature of that man, for all of our history, mankind is connected to religious, the different kinds of religious ceremonies that tie us together, observances that we have. And one thing that ties a lot of religions together is the idea of a connecting center, something in the center, the axis mundi that tends to connect so much of together. And
Hmm.
so if you look at, and that's one thing that some of the theorists on this film have looked at, is how the black hole at the center of which, it's kind of interesting when Dr. Roth was writing back in, say, 1980. I'm not sure if we knew that a lot of galaxies, if not most of them, seem to have a black hole near the center of the galaxy.
Wow.
And so you've got this centralizing
We didn't know
force.
that until what, this year?
Yeah, right. Very recently, it's centralizing, and if you can also look at that as a portal. So the Axis Mundi being a portal between heaven and hell, a portal between a portal to the afterlife. So many different things that we seek. A portal. Another version of that is the Creator. In a lot of religions, the Creator comes, makes the heavens and the earth, and in so many different religions, for 5,000 years of human history of writing about religion, makes the heaven and the earth, and then leaves, but there's still the portal. After the creator leaves, there's still some sort of portal. And the idea that black hole, being at the center, that centrality of the galaxy, and the center of, and we're always seeking a center to ourselves, kind of connected to our soul, but that centrality, and it also allows that portal between our current life, the world we know, the mundane world, and then hell, and then the afterlife, and then
Yeah.
yeah, this film uses the black hole to bring all that stuff together, and it's fascinating. And then the film dares you're with those special effects to take us through a black hole to see
Yes.
what happens on the other side. Can you think of some other films that do that? That where you go through the black hole?
No, no. Closest thing was Deep Space Nine, where they went through a wormhole and
Ah,
they had the prophets from of Bajor that were
oh, right, absolutely.
the timeless creatures that lived inside the wormhole. But other than that, no, I haven't seen anything on a black hole like that. Usually, it was just kind of a window into something else or something like that. I'm afraid I didn't see Event Horizon, although it was highly touted when it first came out. I never got in to see it, so I'm not sure how they dealt with it there. But we've seen,
It seems, yeah, it seems like a lot of them don't quite go through it. There's that
yeah,
episode of Space 1999 that actually you go through it. Everybody ages as you go through it, and it feels like some sort of heavenly force is taking out the space. What's the name of the base in Space 1999?
Alpha.
Moonbase Alpha. Yeah,
Yeah,
Moonbase. It takes you through to some other side, but yeah, they dared to do that. And then the other thing, yeah, that we had the centrality of everything. Then there's another scholar who writes. He's written about Space 1999. He wrote extensively about this film. I think John Muir, and Muir writes about you kind of uses he uses the really the kind of horrific versions of Manetian, kind of a Manetian ending,
mhm,
and Manny was again. It's kind of, it also brings up the idea of the Garden of Earthly Delights, especially in the by Bosch, those
okay,
medieval kind of paintings by Bosch that
right.
shows you, Earthly Delights is a misleading title for the name of his painting. It's horrific, but this film really goes through that at the end, and you can see those Venetian horrific scenes, uh, and it's just and the effects of that, the fire that you see,
Yeah.
it flames of hell. It's amazing.
Yeah, that was a truly disturbing part of the film. I mean, in a good way, it was something that you see Reinhardt get his comeuppance along with Maximilian, his shell of an assistant by this point, and there was, since Maximilian Schell was the lead in this, there was a joke at the studio that was a scene where Maximilian got in his shell,
Exactly.
but
He was trapped in Maximilian
but
shell.
that's true. But we also
Exactly.
got, yeah, we also got once again that hellscape that was shocking, I think. And
Yes.
I think it's
Oh,
time
for a
though that we
child,
say
just like
something.
you were saying.
Yeah.
Oh, take your kids to that. Oh, I've got the sheets for you, honey. After the ah, I doubt the sheets had the flames of hell printed on them, but still, I mean, you could buy for the movie.
Yeah.
But
It's in the
yeah,
lobby,
and
just
that's
right next to the special
oh,
clubs.
those effects are beautifully done. I
Yeah,
mean, the
really.
flames, Reinhardt trapped in yeah, yeah, Reinhardt trapped in Maximilian's shell, and they come together and merge. Um, and then you pull back and you've got this demonic figure. That almost looked like when Reinhardt and Max are merged together, standing on looks like a mountain of hell in that
Yes.
hellscape. The fires blow that looked like some sort of primitive demonic um, figure that you might have seen, some that a primitive civil, artist from a civilization 2,000 years ago might have carved that as
Yeah.
a yeah, just. And then you keep pulling back, and then you see the crew, and the crew themselves is another thing that is just hellacious. The idea of what
Yeah.
he did to the crew.
Yeah, it's
Did
true. There was all of that, and I think that while we're talking about who was playing in this, Maximilian Schell was probably the best actor in this whole thing. I mean, you believed him from start to finish. He had that certain Captain Nemo kind of vibe to him, but he made that part his own, and you believed every word he said, and believed his whole. I mean, it put us in the position of Anthony Perkins, who was saying he's a genius,
Absolute. Yes, it
and
really does.
and and
Yeah,
I give some credit to Anthony Perkins for how he did his job. It was just creepy enough. I mean,
Yeah,
the whole thing was kind of creepy going through it, and Anthony Perkins kind of punctuated it. When you think,
absolutely. I've heard some criticism of him, but
yeah,
I really think you're exactly right. You needed to have somebody punctuating, being a little bit similar to, and yet can play off of Maximilian Schell,
yes,
who is, yeah, he is, yeah, he is. To have him in this film is gives it the absolute gravitas it needs, and he is perfect for the part. And you're right, Anthony Perkins plays off him beautifully. The one who a good actor just that could never seem to find what he needed, and I'm
yeah.
not going to criticize the actor. I think it's in the script. Is Robert Forster
Oh yeah, I agree.
just
He
needed
he was given
something
nothing to
more?
do. He was John Robinson in Lost in Space. He was just, the hero
That
there,
is
and
so
absolutely two dimensional and given nothing to do.
right. That's exactly, and I've heard some good projection booth, another good podcast, makes that Lost in Space. It mentions Maximilian Schell as kind of the Dr. Smith part, and I kind of,
I don't think so.
maybe early Dr. Smith in the early black and white episodes where he was actually more evil than silly. But
Maybe so. But
I'm more of a
yeah,
maybe so on that one. I think he's his own entity, as an obsessed, brilliant scientist, pushing the limits, pushing the bounds, the Promethean bounds of science, and it just doing it beautifully. Um, yeah. And then there's the part of
well,
oh,
the
I'm
rest
trying.
of the casting was just central casting.
Yeah,
Send
yeah,
me a young guy, Joseph Bottoms. Okay, his
yeah.
brother was Timothy Bottoms, who made a much bigger career than Joseph Bottoms did.
Right.
Yvette Mimieux, who was in every TV show of the time, playing the wife of whoever got murdered, and
Yeah.
and Ernest Borgnine. And where
Oh,
did they get
thank
the idea that Ernest Borgnine needed to be in this, playing a journalist? My
you.
gosh.
Well, which goes to say it's probably good that he was not selected in All the President's Men. I think it was a close call, but but wow, playing a jerk. No, it just doesn't. Whew. And it's funny. The novelization. Alan Dean Foster does some terrific novelizations,
Yes.
and in the book, you almost don't even you get into the character of the journalist, and most of the time after you see the film, you read the book. In your mind's eye are the characters you saw in the film, but the journalist is such a good journalist in the book that I started seeing. I love Ernest Borgnine. This
Oh,
is
me too.
not the right part for him.
No, he
And
was
so in the
he can
book,
do comedy like nobody can. He can do a good dramatic part. I mean, Alfie. But if
right?
if they wanted to cast a journalist, that's where Roddy McDowall should have been.
Oh, that's a
And
good
then
point.
make Ernest Borgnine the robot, and then cut that part out. I
Yeah,
mean, just get the robots out. The idea that robots can
I'm
have
laughing too
ESP
much.
is another thing that worries me, but that's a whole other thing. But
I love
yeah,
that
he
idea.
just he
That
just
would have
didn't
been
need
a
to be
good
in this
matching.
film. Yeah,
Yeah, I could see that process, Professor B. I totally you got Ernest Borgnine as a robot, and then he's matched up with Slim Pickens, and somebody says, maybe a pox on both their houses, and they get rid of the robots, keep Roddy McDowell as a very smart, but and it was more, and I could see,
but
when
annoying
Ernest
journalist.
Borgnine at the end first, what's that?
But he would be a
As
journalist, but kind of an annoying one.
right,
Yeah,
and then I could see him making that twist at the end, that turn at the end. I'm going to get the heck out of here and leave everybody, because
yeah.
all of a sudden Ernest Borgnine does that, and it's kind of supported previously, but it's kind of not. And Roddy McDowell would be perfect for that part.
He might have even made a decent captain of the ship because he could play that. He's
I
the
could,
person who could kind of hold together a group of people who are not necessarily orthodox, aka McHale's Navy. But perhaps
back
that
to
didn't
Ernest
work.
Borgnine.
Yeah, yeah. Give that to Robert Forster and let Robert Forster get a decent film somewhere.
I like your casting ideas.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's amazing how that's an important decision. Casting is huge, and
Yes.
of course with scripting, we talked about the end of the script. One thing to Speaking of the end of the script, it had four different endings, and you've probably heard. Have you heard of the four different
No,
endings?
no, I do not. I had not heard of that.
Oh, okay. Well, one I just came across in the book by Alan Dean Foster, which, of course, what they would do for these things is they would give him the script, and it makes you wonder if he even had an end of a script to work with, because so that this book comes
Probably
out.
not.
Probably not. It comes out before the movie. It comes
Yeah.
out maybe a week or two before the movie. Ooh, there's the book. So his ending is completely different, and it's incredible. Basically, there's no heaven and hell, no Venetian heaven and hell. Um, the trip through the black hole is really fast. I think it does. Basically, it's somewhat. It's not even extended like 2001, but I think there is an aura of like a white light, and basically, they bond together. They use the ESP connection between Vincent and the professor, to the woman
Yeah.
professor. They use that ESP connection to then go to a level of sheer consciousness. They at first, and you're kind of in Forrester's mind's eye as you're going through this. He thinks he's going to die, but he maintains his consciousness, and he realizes it's that Esper connection that's keeping them together. And then they literally become molecules, dust, water, gas, essential elements of maybe a new solar system. And
Hmm.
yet, instead of it'd be like a particle of sand on a beach with a shared consciousness, and they are aware that they're becoming the elemental building blocks of some new system. It's wild. Another
There's a scene in
version.
Animal House that describes that,
Oh my goodness,
and they were high when it happened.
that's interesting. Another ending. Remember the records you could get? You could buy a record that went with you
Oh
could buy
yeah,
the little
yeah,
33 yeah, that went with the storybook, the book that goes with the story. But again, this has got to come out before the movie comes out. So the story, they go through kind of a black hole through a white hole portal, kind of like the Einstein Rosen bridge, and then they're basically discovering new planets, and they're in their ship. Though they're not elemental elements, they're
yeah.
in the ship seeing new planets. And I think one of the characters says, hey, well, we don't know where we are, we're on the other side of the universe, but we were trying, that's what we're on this mission anyway to do. What are we to do is to discover. And so off they go to discover things. The fourth version, is the movie as is. But the
Yeah.
third version of the movie, um, remember when, as we're going through the 2001 like sequence, and we go, and then it's instead of they kind of do slow motion strobing of the characters rolling around and upside down
Yeah.
after they go through the hellscape. That because after they go through the hellscape, that's right. It's beautiful image. Go through the hellscape, and all of a sudden, it's like we go through cathedral windows, like we're going through a cathedral, and then an
Right.
angel seems to lead the way through the cathedral. Um, so then they go to strobing, and then we go into um, the, God, she's great. She's great. We go into the the professor's eye, the one with the ESP. We go
Oh,
into
Yvette
actually we
Mimieux.
go
Yeah,
into
I forget what her
and
name was in the.
it's
She
driving me
was
nuts. She's a great
Dr. Kate McCrae.
Dr. Kate McRae, and played by Jean Moreau. And we're going into, then we even go into her eye, and I thought that's cool. If there's anything like a black hole on our bodies, it's like going into the iris, like going into that vortex. And we
Well,
go in there
you've always heard that they say the eye is the reflection of the soul.
exactly, and so we're right, exactly. So in this other ending, I think we go into the eye, and then when we come out, we're looking at, it's, and you can find it online. There's a script that's online, actually on Facebook. It's at the end of the script. So at the end of the script, we come out of her eye, and we're in the Sistine Chapel, and all of a sudden, it was the painting in the Sistine Chapel, and there's God is seated, and she ends up being behind God. I want to extrapolate that maybe the other characters in the film were also in this painting as we come out of her eye, and then we're in the Sistine Chapel, and it's like the it's like Michelangelo painted them in his vision of
Mm.
God. God on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. What a fascinating ending. Apparently, maybe they went to Rome to even film this. Obviously, they got that close up of her face would go in the eye. It would be
Yeah.
incredibly easy just to reverse that process and would come out of her eye. But wow, that's the third ending, and then the fourth ending is the movie the way it is. But what? Had no idea. They obviously were casting about for some fascinating endings.
They were, and in fact, the original idea for Dr. McCree was supposed to be Sigourney Weaver, but
Wow,
she was already hired to be on Alien, and so they couldn't get her.
that is fascinating. That is fascinating. Wow, and what a different film, which comes out that fall. Did Alien come out first before?
No, I think it
Uh,
came out later, but it was very close because this
Very
is what
close.
79. Yeah, this is 79.
79. What a great time to be in theaters.
Yeah,
To
it really
Star Trek.
was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, we think of all the things we can watch now with streaming and theaters, and would have been an incredible. Well, we lived through it, but that was
Yes.
an amazing time to be a viewer to be going to movie theaters. Wow.
Yeah, we were complaining that it was $3 per ticket.
And I would, oh man, yeah, yeah, we were, we did not know what we were talking. It was well worth it. Oh my God, just an amazing film.
Yes, let's talk about
Oh,
the
how about the
music.
music? What did you
Yes.
think of the music?
Of course, John Barry did this, and we know that he has done some great scores. Not only what was it, Star Trek Two or Star Trek Three, and then he also did Somewhere in Time, which was beautiful. With
Oh,
all the
right,
continuo that was in there was beautiful, and I
the
love the
James
music
Bond
for
theme.
this. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But it's funny. It does the movie the music is so heavy. It's perfect for it, but
yes.
there's no theme for the robots. Yeah, how there's so many times you get
There we
different
go. You
themes for
see,
different
we should
characters.
have cut the robots out. Didn't even have a theme.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no musical theme for the robots at all. You know what? That would have been even more awful if they had their own theme, because then you'd get a 2 second hit. Oh, they're around the corner.
I
But
would hope it was John Barry saying, "I'm not going to write for those. I don't care what you say, how much you pay me. I'm not writing for those because that would have to be the jump through the park music, and we don't do this."
right, right. Well, oh gosh, yeah, that's exactly right. He's John Barry, fantastic score. It really is a good
Yeah.
score though, but thank goodness there's no musical musical. I hope nobody just was this apparently speaking of music, there's some digital connection to we're talking about the effects, but the music was apparently one of the first digital recordings ever done. If I've kind of looked into that a little bit, before CDs, it must have been I'm guessing some sort of uh, maybe kind of like an early digital audio tape
Hmm.
where some sort of musical but apparently that made retrieving the music for Anchor Bay who did a little bit of a restoration, not much of a restoration. This film needs a restoration. This film
Yeah.
needs some TLC. Go find those deleted scenes, interview the actors, the surviving actors, and if there's anybody left in special effects, it would be an awesome interview. But I love the way Criterion does this with a special treatment. Arrow Films does this. They'll get a film and then and also a director's commentary would be great. This film it really could use that TLC restoration.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I was wrong about Alien. It actually came out 7 months before The Black Hole.
Oh, so it came out in the spring of '79.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so
But
that's
yeah, but I'm trying to find if there's anything here on the
digital side
music
of it. Yeah, that
or
was
digital. I don't know that they did. Um, they had one digital shot, and that was that crosshatch thing that they did
oh,
from
what
the
was the
beginning.
digital shot? The crosshair thing,
It was the green hash lines in the very beginning.
right? Oh, exactly. At the very
That was
beginning.
all that computer graphics could do with those things.
That's right. That's well, it looked better than Tron. A lot better. Not Tron. Sorry, Pong. Pong.
Pong. Yeah,
Speaking
well,
of,
that's something else because Tron came very shortly after this. And they even used some of the elements that they made for this picture in Tron, I'm told. And of course, they're remaking Tron now, and it makes sense that they might want to remake this. And thankfully, they wouldn't have Ernest Borgnine or Roddy McDowall for this. Maybe they can do it right.
yeah, that's a the maybe they could do it. That's a good point. They could take what was good and make it better and chop off the other. The that's a very
Oh,
good.
I have another little piece of trivia that you might like.
Yeah.
Harlan Ellison was briefly brought on as a scientific consultant. He was
Oh,
fired on his first day because he pitched an animated porno movie starring Disney characters. Roy Disney found out about it and said, "I don't want him on this lot," and that was it.
Disney's right. Walt's nephew said no. I didn't realize it was Roy Disney that got rid.
He was in
But
charge
just
of the
when I saw
studio at that time.
Harlow's, just for a franchise that was kind of made to work at least a little better with Harlan Ellison, he would had an incredibly troubled relationship with Star Trek, but it's hard to imagine him lasting half a day on this film, being Harlan Ellison being Harlan Ellison. Uh, what I was looking up was the we're on this when I mentioned John Kenneth Muir has some fantastic writings online, Muir, about
Yep.
this film, and he goes into the Manichean, the connections with Mani, and Mani, especially looking to the relationship of humans, Christianity, and heaven and hell, and then he builds on that to his observations are fascinating with this film. And what did you find out? What
I still haven't found out anything about the music,
digital into things? Yeah,
we were talking about Maximilian being kind of a satanic figure, and it turns
right.
out that the design of that came from Fantasia.
My goodness,
Yeah, that was
my
the satanic demon
what's in
Chernabog
fantasy?
was in Fantasia, and they modeled Maximilian on that.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating. And one thing about Tron too is Disney was floundering so much. This film apparently did make money. In a similar way of Star Trek, it did not knock it out of the ballpark.
Yeah,
People were confused. Yeah, and yet it still made money. And in some respects, you can say, I mean, it wasn't a fast rescue of the Disney name. They needed a rescue. This was not the fast rescue. Michael Eisner came along and helped them out a couple of years later and
yeah,
rebranded things with Roy Disney. But in a sense, when you think about it, the rebranding of Disney was to make a film that was more adult. They knew they needed to do that. This was their first attempt. But because it made money, they made Tron. Without this film, there might not have been a Tron, which is
true.
interesting. Yeah.
I think
And
so. I think so. Tron was certainly a big hit for them, and probably not as big as they wanted even then. But
right,
it's become such a cult film. This one has two, but more so
right.
Tron that they've remade it. And we had a suggestion by one of our viewers that we should do Tron. So
I
maybe
could
we'll
see
think
that.
about that. Yeah, I'll have
I
to watch it
absolutely
again.
love it. And I
Yeah,
love the second one that came out in 2010.
yeah,
And then right, sounds like they're making a third one. That's
yeah.
right. It's
They
right
have a
around the
third one
corner.
in release right now. So
That's exactly right. Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. But I agree with you that Disney was one of these studios that was known mostly for cartoons and Mary Poppins and Dean Jones pictures and
Right.
the Shaggy Dog, that darn cat, the what was it, the one where the Haley Mills is twins, that they remade it with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis.
And that's coming out. Yeah, Freaky
Yeah,
Friday.
they're redoing
Yeah.
that, but that was originally a Disney film, and it was all everything with striped awnings and small town America kind of stuff, and maybe a little pathos in it, kind of like if you remember Follow Me Boys with Fred McMurray. That
Which
was
one?
made. Follow Me Boys is about the Boy Scouts.
Right, right.
Very good film, but it was very much just kind of Lawrence Welky, post-war middle class kind of stuff.
That's a great musical comparison, Lawrence Welk. That that
Every
is.
member of my band is a family man. So,
I love that. That the one thing I did realize that we're talking about the black hole. The Mani was a Persian philosopher, and he helped. Muir mentions the shaman figure, and a lot of these films in black hole films have a shaman-like figure, like Cybok
mhm,
in Star Trek Five. The kind of a
yeah,
shaman-like figure, and this ultimately turns out to be an ultimate this shaman-like figure in this film. Dr. Reinhardt is an unreliable narrator. And another thing that's kind of interesting is that it's in a lot of some commonalities with these films. You mentioned like Event Horizon. A lot of these films have a derelict ship that our crew is attracted to, and there's something about that is just so fascinating and it pulls the crew we're following into this vortex of terror. A lot of times, of course, the black hole vortex, the black hole
yeah.
being this more than just a vortex. This is vortex being a connection, heaven, hell, leading perhaps to a white hole. But this ship, and one writer called it a glamoring ship that pulls us in, and on that ship, a lot of times we have a shaman-like figure, and that, of course, would be Dr. Reinhardt in this film. And like you mentioned, Maximilian Schell, absolutely perfect for that part.
He was. And do you know that they had a whole mess of actors they were considering for his role? Harry Andrews, Peter Cushing. I could see Peter Cushing.
Ah, I could.
Herbert Lom, Kurt Jurgens, Patrick Troughton, of
Ooh,
all people, Christopher Lee. I could get that one too. Donald
totally.
Pleasant, Hardy Kruger, Max von Sydow, Jeremy Kemp. Those were considered for the role. I think they cast it right in that case.
I do too, but there were some other ones you could see also.
Yes.
Uh, wow, Max von Sydow could have been good too.
Yeah,
Man,
good.
that's man. Yeah, like you mentioned, there's so many layers to this film, and as you
Yes.
peel back those layers, as we do in mention peel back those layers, as in an onion.
Yeah.
Sometimes some of those layers are not so good, like with the robots, but other layers are fascinating.
That was true. There was one other interesting little trivium in there, is that they were planning on doing it all in weightless state. They weren't going to have artificial gravity, but they found that suspending the cast by wires was going a bridge too far, if you will. And they it still took them like
Interesting.
26 weeks to film all this.
It was a yeah, a long shoot. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Yeah, that. So most of the time, it's most of the time it's artificial gravity generated by the Cygnus, the derelict ship, which isn't a
Yes.
derelict ship, but it sure feels like one.
Yeah.
Um, the yeah, and there so most of yeah, there's the artificial gravity scenes of weightlessness. Are there any? I'm trying to remember. I watched it just last week. I'm
Yeah.
trying to
There
remember any
there
on the
were
Palomino. Do we have any
on the
weightless?
Palomino. Yeah, on the Palomino. That was the only time it was.
That's the only time. Well, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And you were saying they did not use wires for that.
They did use wires for it, but
They
they said
did use
the problems with dealing with the wires made them decide not to do that and give the Cygnus artificial gravity.
and get it over with. Just give the Cygnus
Yeah,
artificial. Yeah. Oh, some of those.
pardon me.
This, one thing that's interesting too. I know we've been at it for a bit, Doctor B, but
Mhm.
one thing that is interesting in the Cygnus, and again, some of those effects can go up and down. But when that meteor shower, and of course, classic sci-fi, it's harkening back to you got to have a meteor shower. Comes seems to come from nowhere. And I always find myself when I'm watching that film, there are times it's like Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There are times you're giving it your full attention, and times you tend to drift off. It gets a little slow at times. Do we explore? Do those meteors just appear out of nowhere?
Yeah, pretty
Is that
much.
just a random event?
I think
Meteor.
they, yeah, I at first thought they'd come out of the black hole, but they didn't. They just came by, and
That is a
they had
50
meteors
trope.
just so they could do that big rolling thing down the corridors, which I kind of wonder if that gave the idea for Spielberg later for Raiders of the Lost Ark for that big rock that was rolling through the cave.
Rolling through the one thing that
Let it.
Alan Dean Foster um, it mentions, I think he did not like in his novelization. He did not like the idea that you can breathe in space. And at some point after the meteor shower, we have taken we're breathing in space. The
Yeah,
in the movie as such, the only way you can make up for it in your mind is the air rushing out. Well, there's just so much air rushing out. They're still
or
breathing that
shielding
air
on the
that it's rushing out.
yeah, or force fields or something.
Right. They're still breathing.
Yeah,
Alan Dean Foster in the novelization decides that there's an exterior layer that is still not punctured. There's an
okay.
interior layer. The exterior layer is almost going, but he's just not going to let those characters breathe in space. He decides, this is not necessarily Neil deGrasse. What's his last name? Neil
Tyson.
deGrasse Thompson.
Tyson.
The Tyson, right? Terrific astronomer, wonderful astronomer. He does not. He said this is the least scientific of all science fiction films,
Yeah,
and I'm sure breathing in space is probably number one on the list.
yeah. That would just get in the way. Now they say that the model was like 12 feet long. That's probably one of the biggest shooting models they've ever built for a science fiction film. I don't. It doesn't say that here, but I'm thinking that it has to be because the the Enterprise, the movie version of the Enterprise was like 6 feet long, and I think that the TV version was not much. It was maybe seven.
Right, right.
And in Star Wars, who knows? They had, depending on the shot, 6 or 7 different versions of each of the ships. So
Of each of the
I'm
ships.
thinking the biggest ones probably weren't more than 6 feet long, but this was like 12.
Yeah,
And
right.
that incredible detail that they had in it. Their problem was
Oh,
that they had to ship it from where it was built, and because of the towers and things like that on it, they were afraid that it was going to get damaged in transit. And they ended up putting it in a crate in a sling, and that's how they got it there undamaged.
wow. Oh, and I can't imagine. It's so fragile. It's fragile looking. It had to be very fragile as a
Yeah,
model
I
too.
imagine it was.
Yeah. Speaking of the end of the film, I did find I was just impressed with the novelization at point. This is just a paragraph from speaking of the model and it being destroyed and the meteor shower. This is I had marked this passage. It's Reinhardt. It's after he's been pinned down by a falling. In the novelization, they called it a view screen that fell down after
Oh yeah,
after this initial destruction of the meteor shower starts to destroy the Cygnus. He gets pinned down. Max just leaves. The robot just leaves,
yeah,
doesn't stay put. It's kind of ironic. All the cyborgs fascinate. That in and of itself is fascinating. The crew has been turned into cyborgs. They just stay at their posts. Max Reinhardt cannot make them come rescue him, and so so basically he's there pinned on the ground, pinned in the Cygnus, and he's thinking about how he had spent 20 years of his life, he'd spent lobbying for the construction of the Cygnus and another 20 to bring it into space. He would go on, but without it. He would not be he would be cheated of the triumph of being, of being there with the black hole, of all those discoveries. And then he turns and well, this is actually before he gets hit. He turns to follow Maximilian, but then he, of course, gets hit and he turns his attention back to the screen. He tries to push himself free. Occasionally, his gaze would travel to the still functioning main screen to the view of the expanding blackness that would soon swallow the Cygnus. Somehow, and then you start following the other
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
It's a really poignant. I love the way that Alan Dean Foster does a super job. He talked about writing the scripts. If you look at a screenplay, it's so bare bones. Screenplay does not go inside a character's mind. Screenplays, the way they're written, are designed to be bare bones, so that the director can visually see the action, but not so much get into the actors' heads. He would do that that way the director can interpret. There's room for the director in those open spaces in the script. There's room for the director to put his or her vision into the film. But Alan Dean Foster, of course, is given a script to turn into a novelization, and it's sparse. And so he's able to go inside the characters, and he loved that process. Apparently, he did novelizations for all sorts of different science fiction shows, and they're really good. He does a super job of giving you what the characters are thinking and feeling.
And so I think that should be a wrap for this particular podcast. We're talking about the black hole. Thank you, Professor O, as always. It is an interesting topic and something I think we could continue discussing for another hour or two.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting into the novelization and leaving the film. So yes, this is a podcast on the film.
Right. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in about a week. Until then, don't go far.